Let's go ahead if we can and move on. Ladies and gentlemen, like I said, we haven't been here in a while. The last time you saw us, we were doing our dissertation on Ron Rivera, his entire 10-year
Yeah.
and his exit. He is no longer with us, no matter what the opening video says. We have a new head coach, ladies and gentlemen, and Will. This guy was not too far from us. Right in the division, the defensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys is hired by the Washington Commanders, Dan Quinn. He's our new head coach. We know about all the changes and everything that's coming. But first and foremost, when you first heard this, Will, what were your thoughts, man? What was your reaction?
It's interesting. I kind of thought he might be one of the leading candidates, the whole time. So I guess sort of I wasn't surprised, but I also was slightly excited. To me, it's like he's not the most exciting hires out there when it comes to something. He's not the under 40 type hire, but I think he's really steady. And I think he's going to prove, well, we've got some things that are showing that he's going to prove to be that he very well may have been the right hire for them, for this team right now. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, that honestly was one of my first thoughts, is that, a lot of these guys that we were looking at were young and they were the flashy, new toy or whatever. And yeah, that does seem great to get the latest, nicest thing. But then I thought about what was EB last year? You know what I mean? Mind you, he didn't get, hired at different jobs that he had taken, but still, this time last year, we're just like, how in the world can we get somebody like EB fresh off a Super Bowl victory? You know what I mean? And we see how that panned out. But I think to your point, I mean, we know a lot of people are saying, oh, this is Ron Rivera 2.0. But I think just in the same way Ron Rivera was kind of perfect for that time, with the pandemic, Dan Snyder, and everything going on, I think equally Dan Quinn might be perfect for this time, where you do have a lot of newness to the franchise, new owner, new coach, obviously a lot of other new coaches. Who knows, maybe new quarterback, new other players. And it almost makes you kind of think, okay, we needed a steady hand in this, somebody that's been around before. He's been to, the playoffs, championships, all that stuff. And we've seen what he did with Dallas in that defense, but now he's our head guy. But Will, still, he did come from Dallas, and albeit he crushed us the times that he played us, when it comes to somebody tough, and we talked about this when he was just one of the names on the list, when it comes to these tougher teams or the clutch moments, he's not getting it. What's the difference between him as the DC or between him as coach in the past? What's different now?
Well, I think you had a chance to learn a little bit, and I think this also shows how he got the job. We had heard after his first interview that he very much impressed, and that he was, while everyone thought Ben Johnson was the leading candidate, they also said, do not forget about Dan Quinn. He is way up there. And I think he impressed with his leadership and his experience. And the fact in his press conference, he talked about how when he was removed from Atlanta, he had an outside company come in and consult and talk to him about, this is what went right, this is what you did wrong, so he could kind of learn, when I have that next shot, I can do better. Because let's think about it. I mean, he took a team to the Super Bowl. All right. That's not a bad first run, as a head coach. You could say the same thing about Ron Rivera. Yes, you can. But he had some success in Atlanta. I think when Kyle Shanahan left and Matt LaFleur left, that hurt the offense. And then they got some, I think his voice ran hollow in Atlanta by the time the pandemic happened and he was let go. But I think he impressed them by saying he knows how to lead, and not just defense, but lead anybody. I believe that people called them saying, Dan Quinn is a great coach. Dan Quinn is a great leader. This is a guy you want on your organization. I believe when people like Logan Paulson, who's a Redskin media guy, says, I loved playing under this guy. He had us all together. And then I think the big part about it is his ability to build a staff. We're going to get to some of the names he's compiled, but he did it in Atlanta too. He's the one who had Kyle Shanahan, Matt LaFleur, Raheem Morris, Mike McDaniel. He had all those guys with him in Atlanta too. He's been around the league. He knows people. He knows how to build the staff. He's doing it here. And I just felt during his press conferences, there are times where like he's not the CEO stand up there and sound good the way Ron sometimes could. But when you heard him talk ball, that's when I got excited. You know, when he talked about, listen, we're going to be where our feet are. Listen, when I've got a defensive player, I want to make sure, what does that guy do well? And I need to exploit that. Yep. I was just like, thank you. Finally. Somebody who recognizes like, it's not my square peg. You know, and where's you're the round hole. We're not going to fit together. Like he was like, I'm going to make this work. When he started talking coach speak in that press conference, that's when he got me fired up. When he was being CEO, I'm like, he's not the best CEO communicator, but in those interviews, he started talking about what he would do with the franchise and the defense and it got them excited.
Oh, absolutely. And hey, look, I fell in that kind of that. I don't want to call it a trap, but I fell in that trap, that motivation, that pump, like him talking about the guys and him talking about, Adam Peters and how we came together. But I think it's what you said that was the biggest thing for me, is that he did go back and look at what worked and what didn't work. And he looked at each of his destinations. I mean, obviously the Falcons, we know about that, but even when he moved on from Atlanta, even when he was at Dallas, his time there, he learned what worked. And one of the things that you talk about, Logan Paulson, that I love, those relationships, with him building those relationships, the things that we liked from Ron, his guys were his guys, everything. We're seeing that now. Dan Quinn's guys, they follow him. I mean, we'll see that in the coaching staff, but also it's just he brings a little bit more credibility, in my opinion. And it's just I think it's that time. It's right for it. But let's be honest, we're Washington fans. We've been here before. To Nathan's point, I have to see it, believe it. I've heard coaches talk like that, and actions don't follow.
Sure.
Same here.
Sure. Eric Bieniemy. Eric Bieniemy, how excited were we at his press conference?
Yeah. 365 days ago, we were here talking about, look at Terry McLaurin's in there, and look at Jahan. These guys are all high-fiving him, and he's talking to him, and it was all nice. It all seemed great. But maybe when he was talking about himself in the third person, we should have picked up something was a little funny.
Right. Well, you know what impresses me, that as I've learned more about Dan Quinn, is you talked about learning evolution. The defense that he ran in Seattle with the Legion of Boom, it was not the same defense that he ran in Dallas. So this is not I'm Jack Del Rio. I've been a 2-time head coach based on what I know how to coach, and this is what we're going to run. It literally is him saying, what is the league like? What type of team do I have right now? What type of scheme is going to make us thrive? That's what we're going to create. And that, I think, is that's a difference when you're talking about a coach getting a second chance, is if they show that ability to learn and evolve. I think that can separate himself tremendously.
Oh, absolutely. And what can also separate, somebody alluded to earlier, I talked about relationships, but every stop he's went to, you talk about the staff that he had at Atlanta, every stop he's went to, it's like he's picked up a piece or two. He's made a connection with somebody. And as we see, they've all kind of flooded over here. But more than that, it's also when you've been around to different places and you've had success and you're continually learning and reinventing yourself, a lot of people look at that like, I want to play with that guy.
Yes.
I want to come to that organization. And as we've seen, it happened that way.